Hey guys, this is just a quick video about reading poetry. I find that reading poetry is something that people get freaked out about a lot, so I hope this helps. So first of all, what is poetry? You guys probably have a general idea about it, but poetry it's different depending on when it was written, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But overall, poetry is a powerful condensed form of language that expresses emotions, ideas, and experiences, which is a really vague definition, but it gives us somewhere to start. So poetry is not going to have things like plot necessarily. It might have some plot. It may not have characters in it like other pieces of literature that we'll look at for the rest of the semester, but it will almost always have imagery and figurative language. So we don't have all the like structural elements that we're going to see when we get to short story and drama with like plot and setting and characters and all of that. So this is really just the like condensed down to focus on imagery and figurative language. So the reason that I had you do the song study before we looked at poetry is because I want you to think of poetry as just a song that's written down, and that is written to be read as being written. So a song is meant to be performed with like, music in the background. It's supposed to have like someone's vocals giving emphasis to different words, but poetry isn't going to have that stuff to work with. So it's really going to focus on like how the poem looks on the page, and how the language itself works. So think of it as like a song, but without all of the like music stuff that goes with a song. So it will read a little bit different than songwriting just because it's kind of designed to be read instead of listened to. So most poetry is going to focus on little stuff like feelings, impressions, moments. It's like a touch grass kind of thing a lot of times, especially in contemporary poetry, we're going to talk about. But it also can be a vehicle for like social change and protest and commentary on political stuff. The structure of poetry can be really, really structured, like down to like how many syllables are in each line, and everything has to rhyme and all of that, like you might see in a sonnet. Or it can be more freeform, where the poet is working with essentially no structure, or they're creating their own structure based on something. So let's talk a little bit about the origins of poetry. So way back before we had printers and books and the printing press and all of that, we needed to be able to pass down ideas, like cultural ideas and stories. But if you don't have anything to write on, or nobody in your community really can read, and reading isn't a common part of your culture like it was for thousands of years, you're going to rely on oral tradition. So poetry began as oral tradition. It's passed down through like people singing songs to each other or telling stories. Think like, around a fire at night, like you wouldn't be on your phone looking at social media, or you wouldn't even be on your, reading a book. You would be sitting with other people and sharing stories. So poetry originated in spoken word from songs, chants, storytelling, that kind of stuff. And it helped preserve history, culture, and emotion. So it's a way that humans have passed down cultural information through words. So the traditional, I'm going to say, I don't know if that's a good description, but old-timey poetry has a lot of musical elements to it, like rhythm, meter, rhyme. It's going to da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that is just because it made it easier to remember. You think about listening to a song, and a song gets stuck in your head, kind of. My kids are really little, and we're watching Miss Rachel right now, so like I go to bed in my head singing icky sticky 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 bubble gum. So that's what poetry kind of started as, and music in general was this, like, we remember things easier when they're in kind of song format. So old-timey poetry is going to have a lot of rhythm, meter, a lot of like structural musical elements to it. But now we have songs. Now we have Spotify. So poetry has kind of become something different in the last 100 years especially, or so, and it's become a lot less like a song and more as it's like its own thing. So poetry now, like most contemporary poetry, is free verse and it reflects modern voices and perspectives. Like there are poems about Beyonce, there are poems about cheeseburgers, there are poems about all sorts of different stuff. So free verse means no set rhyme or meter, so it doesn't have to go, it doesn't have to sound a certain little sing-songy way, like da 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 da. And it's going to explore stuff that's relevant now. So when we think of poetry, a lot of times the stuff that they make us read in high school is like from several hundred years ago, and it's about things that maybe aren't super relevant, like to us, that are descriptions of, oh, ode to a Grecian urn or that kind of things. But people write poems about all sorts of everyday stuff. There are poems about AI. There are poems about all sorts of stuff that goes on in the world now. So just if you feel like you've not liked poetry before, I challenge you to look up some contemporary poetry. Look up stuff that's maybe a little less formal and that is about, themes that we deal with in everyday life. And I've tried to choose poems for this class that are either stone cold classics, contemporary classics, or that are going to that are recent. How about that? So poetry now is also influenced by spoken word, text culture, social issues, memes. So poetry evolves with society. It evolves with time. So it'll change, maybe in the next 100 years or so as well. Maybe it just turns into memes. I don't know. But yeah, so poetry reflects the culture that it comes from. Okay. Literary elements that we're going to look for in poetry, and remember to look at your literary toolbox document to get bigger definitions and more examples. So you're going to have imagery. Remember, imagery is just like they're trying to ask you to imagine something. So they're actually wanting you to picture this in your brain. So it's descriptive language that appeals to the senses. So if I say, oh, it's a dark, rainy day here in my office and the blinds are half closed and I'm sleepy, it helps you see something in your head. So you think imagery, just imagine something, like try to literally picture it in your head. Metaphor and simile are comparisons. Symbolism is objects, images, or words that represent bigger ideas. So this is like, often this is a concrete thing that expresses some kind of abstract meaning. Watch that abstract concrete video again if you need to. But so a symbol of marriage can be, and love can be, a wedding ring. So symbol is just like a concrete thing that expresses an abstract idea. Tone and mood. Tone is the poet's attitude, and mood is the vibe that the poet's attitude creates. Diction is just what words they chose. Sound devices, we're not going to look at a whole ton, but if you want to, you can, like rhyme, rhythm. Alliteration is just repeated, like the blue bubble or something. And line breaks and stanzas. Line breaks and stanzas add emphasis, so we don't have music to go along with it, with the words. So it helps control pace and add emphasis and focus attention. So line breaks and stanzas are not arbitrary. Poets think about this as they write. They're really focused on making sure they break it at the right point because it shapes the meaning and the rhythm of the poem. So line breaks can slow down or speed up your reading depending on how they're situated. And a break can emphasize a single word or phrase, or it can change how an idea sounds because you're kind of pausing at the end of the line before you go to the next line. So really do notice the line breaks when you read poetry. Just know that they're intentional, and you can ask yourself, well, why would they break it here instead of somewhere else? You may not always get a clear answer for that, and that's okay, but big idea here is just be thinking about line breaks. Stanzas are poetry paragraphs. It's just a way of organizing ideas, and sometimes poets will use them to break up ideas like a paragraph, or sometimes they'll use them differently. So stanza is just like a paragraph in poetry. A lot of the ones we're going to read this semester are just one stanza, and that's okay too. So stanzas, you can have one, you can have 50. You just it's a again, it's an artistic choice. Big thing, just start to look at it, know that it's intentional, and know that like the white space matters. It can create pauses or emotional impact, or like it's a choice. Okay. Um, Another thing I want you to think about is, and I'm going to ask you to think about abstract and concrete all semester, that poems are going to be a mix of abstract ideas and concrete details and concrete imagery. So remember, abstract words are intangible stuff, meaning you can't touch it or see it, or it's not a physical thing in the world or an action. Abstract words are intangible ideas and feelings like love, freedom, loss, time. And concrete descriptions help you see something or help it be more real, like in the physical world. Concrete stuff is going to be that imagery stuff that uses your senses. So the combination of abstract idea words and concrete descriptions and imagery is how we create meaning. And you can ask yourself, how do specific images bring a theme in the poem to life? We'll look at how to do that specifically here. So one of the poems that is on your reading list for this week is Mary Oliver's Wild Geese. So I have just gone, and this is a great example one because it's got a good number of abstract words. Some poems are going to have a lot of abstract words. Some poems are going to have no abstract words or very few. It's still a poem. Like you can still have abstract ideas in a poem without those words being explicitly stated. But Mary Oliver's Wild Geese, she does explicitly state quite a few abstract words. So if we read through the abstract words here, we're looking at good, repent, love, despair, home, lonely, imagination, family. Now, if I would just read off this list of abstract words by themselves, it doesn't really mean that much. It's like a whole bunch of stuff. It's really big. It's really vague. But she's talking about all these different big ideas about life: goodness, repentance, love, despair, loneliness, home, family. Like she's able to bring all these big abstract ideas together by tying it down to something concrete. So I've highlighted on this side the abstract words, and over here I have the concrete images. Now I could have highlighted things differently. I just did this quickly to kind of have an example. So tied to this idea, this abstract idea of repentance or repenting, is this concrete image of walking on your knees for 100 miles through the desert. So the meaning here comes from having the concrete description as well as the abstract idea. Now, she could have just left off repenting, I guess, and just, you do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, and you would have to kind of infer the idea of repentance. So she could have left this off, but she gave it to you. So sometimes they're going to give you the abstract word to work with. These are the themey words, and sometimes they're not. So just know that. So we have all of this concrete imagery here in this poem, and we also have these abstract words. So one really good way to read poetry is to read and look for the abstract words and look at how those abstract ideas or feelings or beliefs or values or whatever it is being brought to life in concrete, specific detail. Okay. So I find a lot of people have trouble with poetry just because they don't really know how to get started. So I'm going to tell you to read it 3 times. Big thing here is to read it slowly, read it intentionally, and to be curious. So this isn't like a skimming sort of thing. This is where you really want to slow down and pay attention, which is good for your brain to slow down and pay attention sometimes instead of trying to do like 10 different things at once. So the first time you read for overall vibe, just like, how's it sound? What's it about? What are some things you notice? Just like the first time that you listen to a song, you're not really going to pick up on all the nitty gritty details. You're just going to be like, oh, hey, that beat is cool. Same with a poem. You're not going to pick it all up in one go, and it's going to be confusing and frustrating, and it's just not going to work out. So think of it like a song where you're going to need to read it, listen to it a few different times in order to really get a good grasp of it. Like, you can't decide something's your favorite song in the whole world if you only listen to it once. Or you can't maybe decide if you absolutely hate a song if you only listen to it once. I don't know, maybe you can. But yeah, read it once for the overall vibe. Just read it. And don't mean just skim it. I mean, read it slowly. Read it out loud if that helps. I'm going to skip down here to the optional part. Read it out loud. That helps you kind of slow down. Or you can also find a video of the poet or, somebody else reading the poem. Different readers will emphasize different words and elements, and you can also do that for yourself. So if you're first time you're reading it, you're having a hard time, try reading it out loud or finding a video of someone else reading it. If you're struggling with this step, don't worry about it. Just listen to it. So read once for overall vibe. You can listen to it as well. You can read it out loud. And read a second time, and this is where you're really going to spend some time trying to imagine what's being described. This is where you're going to put all of that good concrete imagery to work. Think about what it actually looked like. So if I click back here to Mary Oliver's Wild Geese, there's this whole big concrete section here, which says, "Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers." So if you actually imagine that in this poem, at least, the effect is to kind of zoom out. Like it goes from being focused on you, just one person, to zooming out and kind of getting this like drone's eye view of the landscape. So and you can only really get that if you're putting in the work to imagine what's there. So if she says the sun, imagine the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain. So I'm imagining raindrops. I know rain isn't pebbles. She's being poetic there. So I'm imagining the sun. I'm imagining rainfall. I'm moving across landscapes. So I'm imagining different trees or deserts or something. She says prairies, so I can try to imagine a prairie. Trees, we got lots of trees here. It's not that hard to imagine. Mountains and rivers. So really try to bring this stuff to your mind on that second read. So read once for overall vibe. Read it again and really try to imagine what they're saying. That's the best way to get a poem, is not to try to make weird connections or assumptions. It's to really just try to get in touch with what is there. So notice what images or language stands out. Notice abstract words and concrete images. So it can be helpful if you have annotation software, if you're reading this digitally, or if you print it out, to underline the abstract, circle the abstract words and then, label the images or something. That's something I have people do in my in real life classes. So I give you that if you want to try it on your own. And then after you've got the vibe, after you have imagined it, read it a third time, and this is when you look for those literary elements, imagery, you just did that, but metaphors, line breaks, repetition, what's the author's tone? This is where you get kind of analytical and you start seeing how the poem works and why the writer would connect these abstract ideas with these concrete images in this specific way. Okay, so read it 3 times. It's going to be work. I think that's one of the reasons people don't like it. That's one of the reasons I don't like to do it all the time, is we just want to read something and get it. But with poetry, you really do have to slow down and pay attention. But it can be really rewarding, just like listening to music. If you listen to something once, you might be confusing or you're not sure if you like it or not. But if you listen to it a few times, sometimes you really just fall in love with something and you find a lot of meaning and you find some good words that are going to help you with your life somehow, or say something that you feel but you never were able to say before. So it's work, but it can be worth it. Not every poem is going to be worth it. That's okay. It's different people. But yeah, put in the effort and see what happens. All right, so here's some analytical questions that you can ask about poetry that are based on our poetry assignment. So think about how the poet uses imagery to help you feel something. So images, concrete, feelings, abstract. How do they do that? How do they connect abstract and concrete? Why might the poet have chosen this particular word? What's the effect? Why did Mary Oliver call them clear pebbles of rain instead of just drops of rain? I don't know, maybe it sounds cool. You may not have a clear answer to all of this. Analytical questions aren't about getting the answer all the time. A lot of times it's just about thinking and trying to get some ideas together, get several possible answers together, even though you're not really sure. And one of them, it's not like one of them is right. So the idea is to ask good questions, and that can lead us to really good observations and good answers. But that's not the end goal. The goal here is to ask good questions, and maybe we'll come up with some answers later. But asking good questions is where we want to put a lot of our effort. So another thing, how the line breaks or stanza divisions affect the pacing or the meaning. Why does the tone shift or stay consistent? What does that reveal about the theme? So is the tone like really frantic? Does that affect the theme? So in one of the poems you're going to read, which is called I'm Not Ready to Die Yet, the tone is really frantic. The pace is really fast, and she's talking about she's not ready to die yet. And that fast pace and that, frantic tone creates this theme, this abstract theme of like fear of death or love of life. So it's really these things like kind of work hand in hand. So how does a repeated word or phrase shape the mood or message? In the conditional by Ada Limon that you'll read, there's this repeated word say. So notice that and look at how it changes throughout the poem. Why is the speaker telling us this? What does their perspective add? Why would they write this, right? What are they trying to communicate? How do symbols or metaphors deepen the meaning? And why might the poet focus on specific, elements? So those are just some analytical questions to get you started. There are lots more in the assignment and in the worksheet that you'll do. So think analytically. It's not like you have to come to really clear conclusions. It's more about having a curious mindset. All right, final thoughts. Poetry is personal and open to interpretation. So this is a squishier literature, right? But thoughtful analysis still matters. So big thing is to be patient with tough poems. I try not to give you anything too rough. But be patient when you read this. Really, spend the effort to read it. Read everything 3 times is a good number to start with. Good interpretations of poetry rely on close reading, imagination, and reflection. And you should use evidence from the poem to support your ideas. So just because it's a poem doesn't mean it's about anything and it's just about you and whatever you want it to be about. Like you may have some personal connection to a poem. You may find some meaning in a poem, but you also need to be able to contend with what's actually there, like what's in the poem. So reading a poem is an experience that happens to you in a specific time and place. So like you're only going to read this poem the first time once, just like you only listen to your favorite song the first time once. And you come to this poetry, you come to songs as yourself now, based on all of your life experiences and even like your mood and, what you ate for breakfast that day. So think of it as an experience, and that there are good ways to interpret poetry, which is mostly just like looking at what's there, looking at what's going on in the poem instead of making stuff up. But know that you are going to bring yourself to this, and that you are going to see meaning in the poem differently based on who you are. And also when you read it. So you may read a poem when you're, 19 and it strikes you for some particular reason. And then when you get older, you may read it again and it strikes you in a completely different way, and you're able to understand it differently just because you've gotten older or something else has happened to you. So this reading a poem is an experience. Take the time and effort to invest in that experience. Read things through be patient with it. Read everything 3 times. Really look at what's there, but know that you're also bringing yourself into this, and that's 100% valid. So I hope you enjoy the poems for this week. I probably wouldn't read them all at once. You can figure out how to do it best for you, and let me know if you have any questions.